Hi, Susan. Okay. Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Hi, yeah, Susan had to start the meeting. Larissa's not
I
here yet.
apologize. No.
Oh, is that you, Larissa, with the
I
bridge?
am yet sorry. Technical difficulties today.
Oh, okay.
As always. Technology.
Okay, we are.
Okay.
Okay, there is a, oh, there's Deborah. I thought you were going to be late, Deborah.
Yeah, Deborah popped in. Hi, Deb.
Thomas is here. Our speaker is not here yet, but we can. Oh, there she is, Joanne. Okay.
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, the words are very small. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You know, this is what happens when you're middle aged. You know, everything is like really tiny. You're all right, Joanne? Okay.
I feel your pain.
You haven't started recording.
No, I have not started. Oh, yeah, it started recording. I'm going to pause it.
Oh, are you going to, and we have to start the recording?
We are recording.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Manhattan Community Board 3, Health, Seniors, Human Services, Youth Education, and Human Rights Committee meeting. We will start the meeting shortly. We have a short agenda today. Well, actually a lot of things to discuss. Our first agenda item will be a presentation from the Asian American Federation about resources to combat anti-Asian hate crimes or violence. And then after that, we'll go into our committee planning and goals and some updates about a resource fair that we plan on for parents. Okay, but before we begin anything, I'll turn this over to Larissa and she will explain the procedures of the meeting.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending. I have just a few little quick items. If you are not a member of the committee, if you could please sign in to the chat with your name and your affiliation. This evening, our chat is going to be used for signing in, materials distribution, and technical assistance only. If you are experiencing technical issues, please send me a message via chat and I will reach out to assist you. To reduce background noise, we ask that you please remain muted unless you are recognized to speak. Again, I am available for anyone who is experiencing any issues, and welcome to the meeting. Go ahead, May.
All right, thank you. So our first thing before we start the presentation is we're going to approve the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, they're deemed approved. All right, so that seems to be okay with everyone, the minutes. Now we will have roll call. Thomas?
Okay, welcome everyone. Mei Lee.
Here.
Larissa.
Present.
David.
Here.
Eric.
Yes, here.
Shirley.
Yes, here.
Deborah.
Here.
Thank you. Tatiana.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Heidi.
I'm here.
Ricky.
Here.
And Carmen. Carmen, did you make it yet? Okay.
We don't see her. Okay. Okay, thanks, Thomas. So we will start. Okay, our first agenda item. We want to introduce Joanne Yu. She's the Executive Director of the Asian American Federation. Some of you may know her and you may have heard of the Federation. They've been doing so much work on all this, about many things. But she's here specifically to talk about the Asian hate crimes and the resources. And also, Joanne, if you have anything, I know you have limited time with us today, but if you have anything you want help advocating on, maybe in terms of resources or funding from the city, you could mention it now, but we'll also be talking about that later, because in subsequent meetings.
Great.
About, because we, have a role in the budget, in the city's budget, in the next fiscal year.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I'll try to stay as long as I can to answer any questions that you may have. Obviously, not just for me, but for all of us, this pandemic is, it's, once in a century, as I understand. And for all of us, being stuck at home is not pleasant. It's horrific, but I think it's also a position of privilege to be able to stay home. But as you all know, because they're your neighbors, the Asian American hate crimes, the spike is very real. We knew that this was happening right around January. We anticipated right around January. May, I'm sure, could agree with me that, because I've known May for a really long time, over 2 decades. When I was at the New York Immigration Coalition in May, I think she's still on the board. What I was afraid of, what the Federation was afraid of is exactly what happened to the South Asian Muslim Arab community after 9/11. And so we told all the right people, and nobody listened. I told all the right people, but all the right people didn't care to hear any of that. So part of this, part of where we are for the Federation has been really, really frustrating, because when you tell people we need to get in front of this thing, we need to be able to think about, what the protections are for the community, because while some of us had the privilege of staying home, a lot of people, essential workers, had to get on the subway to go to work. That included healthcare professionals, the undocumented community who went out to the groceries, who worked at the grocery stores, every job imaginable, the vulnerable people, the vulnerable workers around out in the streets. And so for the Federation, we said, please, everybody, think about what you're going to do to put some protections in place. And they said, well, nobody's going to be around, so I don't think we're too worried about it. And the resulting, what ended up happening was just all of the attacks happening in the community. And so we all know about them. You guys, your important work in CB3, the community board encompasses big chunks of Asian community, and exactly what the Asian American community is going through. I just want to share some statistics with you. There's been obviously the huge spike in the Asian, from last year to this year, we see the spike in the hate crimes. But NYPD says there are about 33 hate crimes to date that has been reported to them. They're actual crimes. The reality, and then on the other side of that is the hate incidents, the spitting, verbal abuse, shoving, pushing, everything that doesn't rise to a crime. And that nationally is 3,800. New York City, it's 1,100. That is 800 that we have captured through our own resources, through New York City Human Rights Commission, the National Stop at API Hate. Professor Jung, whenever he refreshes his data, he sends us our number. So altogether, that's about 800. We also get updates from our member agencies who've been keeping track, because oftentimes, if you're an immigrant, if you don't speak the language, you don't call the police. You end up going to the nonprofit to tell them exactly what you're experiencing. And so some of our member agencies have been keeping track. So adding to the 800 have been another 350. That's all of the hate incidents. So, but we know that the number is really low. I think the numbers we're citing, it's between 10 to 30% of the actual incidents that are happening. And the number is low because of all the obviously the challenges, the barriers to reporting. It's the language itself, it's the fear of people, fear of retaliation, so they don't tell anybody. It's embarrassment. It's many things. And so that's why I think the numbers are relatively low. We recently launched, and thank you for all of those who've been supporting us. And, we had a rally early March. All the days run together, so I can't even remember what day it is today, but we had a rally in March, and it really was an opportunity for us to create space for the Asian American community to just because you could just tell when the pressure cooker was just working overtime. And so the rally was really to get people together to be able to stand together and hear from our elected officials about what they were going to do and to help us out and to be able to hear from victims, hear from community advocates, because it was just way too crazy. It's still really crazy. And so we ended up launching the Hope Against Hate campaign. It was a very thoughtful plan. We decided that, I have very young staff. I say young staff because they all know how to use technology, right? So when I tell everybody how we work at the Federation is we always measure twice and cut once, right? And they look at me like, what are you talking about? But that makes no sense. But it's like we're always going to double check everything before we say anything, because that's how we have to be careful. And I think more than ever now, with all of what is happening, we need to be particularly careful so that way we don't misspeak. We don't put something out there that we haven't vetted with experts. And so we did talk to a lot of different safety experts and, saying, this is the plan. What do you guys think? People gave us feedback. There's a lot of back and forth. And so I think what we put out there is something that we think is a good solution. We stand by this and we're really proud of it. And the Hope Against Hate is a landmark and progressive solution in response to to stop the attacks on vulnerable Asian New Yorkers. And so a couple of the campaign items I just wanted to share with you. What we want is, we've asked for $30 million from government. It's in the course of 2 years, right? So I'm not looking to raise $30 million in 1 year. It's going to be $15 million each year. We have, and as an executive director, I'm sure a lot of you who run nonprofits, how hard it is to even ask for $100, right? $1,000. But I think in this time, I have no problems asking elected leaders, asking foundations, asking corporations, hey, I need $30 million. And I think that is because I know what's at stake. And it's been a really long year. You're looking at 1,100 people who are feeling vulnerable, that and that the attacks are happening more in greater frequency with more violence. And I know we all react to what we've seen, but I think that's just tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot of stuff happening that people aren't telling. And so this is why I don't even blink an eye when I say I need $30 million from somebody. What we want to do with that money is obviously to put programs on the ground. One neighborhood is definitely the Chinatown neighborhood. And so I'm going to just share with you some of the plan. We want to be able to centralize the reporting of bias incidents through an in-language reporting tool to connect victims to the services that they need. What we're hearing from the victims is, they don't even know how to, unless you speak English, it's impossible to connect to law enforcement to even report what is happening, let alone ask for any kind of help. Even if you speak English, it's hard to ask for help because you don't know how to navigate the system. And something that I've been saying to a whole lot of people, including Office for Prevention of Hate Crimes and a lot of the city leadership, was the Asian American community, they don't even know what their rights are, right? What's the difference between a hate crime and a hate incident? Like, we don't even know, where do you report certain things? If you get hurt, what do you do, right? Like, none of that was addressed. I think they're going through that now, but I've been so mean, snarkily saying, well, okay, you're only a year late, right? But I guess it's better than never. The funding that we're also asking for would be to create a reporting tool that would be available through various web portals, texting platforms, but also using the communications outlets that immigrants use. You can't just say, oh, we're going to have this really cool thing and it's going to be on the web, because we know many of our, not just the Asian American community, many New Yorkers don't have internet access. They don't have cell phones. They don't have computers at home. So how would they report it? But so we're looking at like ethnic media, working with nonprofit partners to be able to say, these are the places you can go and they'll collect your stories for you to be able to get the help you need. We are also creating a safety ambassador program in Asian majority neighborhoods in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. We're going to partner with a number of Asian-led nonprofits to create an ambassador program that will help train nonprofit staff, but also volunteers about de-escalation strategies, self-defense techniques, mental health first aid, so that they can serve as a safe, deterring presence in these neighborhoods. Also, we are going to ask, the ambassador program will also escort vulnerable community members in public spaces to provide additional safety resources. If seniors want to go to the hospital, but to the doctor's appointments and they're nervous, there's a way that they can sign up and somebody can escort them to wherever they need to be. We also want to establish some safe zones in communities throughout New York City to serve as a safety haven for targeted, safety haven for Asian Americans. And what the safety zone is to partner with small businesses, faith centers, nonprofits, major neighborhood landmark to be able to say, can you put this poster up there? And your only commitment is somebody comes in and says, I need help, that you'll be able to call, one of the partnering organization that's closest to you, make a call for them so that the nonprofits know what to do. I think so much of our work is about, not everything rises to the level of calling the police, right? Certainly there are times when you do need to call in law enforcement, but this really is an alternative to getting law enforcement involved in every situation, because sometimes the victims themselves don't want anybody, the police, to know. And then we also want to set up a in-language victim support services, including an assistance fund to help with assault-related expenses and connecting victims to mental health services. I think that's really crucial. We also want to set up some, victims assistance fund to support those who need financial assistance for bills, living expenses, and other assault-related expenses. It really is our effort to advocate for the increased access to victim compensation fund. So for instance, I want to tell you the story of Noel Quintana. He's the man who his face got slashed on the L tray. As he's trying to navigate what victim services is supposed to look like, they said, oh, call the Manhattan DA's office. Here's a number. So he called and left messages. Nobody ever bothered to call him back. And meanwhile, he's starting to feel desperate and he's starting to panic because he doesn't need help. And he doesn't want to get to the point where he doesn't know what his rights are. And so he called me and said, now what do I do? And so for me, what do I always do? I call City Hall and say, somebody better work on this case before we, before I get really pissed off. I actually called Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, and they were so great because they stepped up immediately, and they called Cy Vance's office and said, you better pick up your phones. And, here's a very prominent hate crimes victim, and you can't even bother to pick up your phone. And so he has a caseworker that he's been connected with a nonprofit organization. He has a caseworker to be able to find out what his rights are. Somebody answered the call. So finally, I think he's getting some help. But the other side of that is, I'm also trying to make sure that whatever his rights are, I want to make sure that he's safe, that his needs are met. So those are some of the, the victim services assistance that we can offer. We need to be able to put real money in there and to be able to offer services. I think that's something that, we're really committed to personally, having to talk to the victims on a regular basis. The other thing we want to work on, some of you may know, the Asian American Federation has been screaming for expanded mental health services in New York City for the last 3 years, especially during the height of Thrive NYC, because we felt like the money wasn't getting out fast enough. And the challenge with any kind of mental health services is that, one, it's not just the Asian community, it's all communities. There's a stigma about mental health. And, what does that mean? Mental health could be depression, right? Like, anxiety, but, people always equate mental health to, it means you're crazy, right? And so then people don't want to be stigmatized by that label. So they don't ever ask for the help that they need, right? And now at this point, we are all going to need mental health. This is going to be the crisis of our time, I think, after COVID, because we all have depression. We all have anxiety. For me personally, there isn't a night that I don't wake up in the middle of the night, because I just have so much built up stress and anxiety happening. But what I want to tell you about some of the perpetrators and the hate crimes is that most of them have mental health issues. It's the saying that all the advocates say, like, hurt people. It's true. And so they don't have the services they need, so they are out in our neighborhoods hurting themselves and hurting other people. And so I have been very vocal saying, with the assailants, they're also victims in some way, so many ways, because the system failed them too, because they never got the help that they needed when they were diagnosed. They don't have adequate at whatever the safety needed to be to make sure that they got the help that they needed. Never happened to them, so they ended up hurting people, and now they're in this horrific legal quandary, and being labeled, potentially as a hate crime assailant. So I think we really need to make sure that there's enough resources put into mental health programming in the city. And then finally, our work is that obviously we want all of you to be involved. It's providing upstandard trainings on verbal de-escalation, possible self-defense trainings in multiple languages. We know that we can't just do everything in English, because that is not the reality. And so we want to be able to do it in as many languages as possible. So we're working with various safety experts to provide these trainings. And primarily right now, we have resources in English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Tagalog, and Vietnamese, so that way people have some level of comfort just even looking at, like, what am I supposed to do in these situations? And so I put our resource link in the chat box, so if you can take a look at that. But that is just the Hope Against Hate campaign in brief. I'm happy to take some questions if you have any. But we will definitely be in touch with May to ask for some support letters. I know that the budget is being discussed right now. I will tell you that we're moving very quickly, because it's not like we were gonna be able to ask for a ton of money. I'm not going to be able to get the city to throw in $10 million, but the city doesn't need to the city council and city hall will need to throw in something to be able to meet the needs right now. And why we are so moving like people, running out of time, it's because we also know that the Asian American community, the issues, our community, when things happen to our community, the spotlight doesn't stand on us for very long. And we know that it's just a matter of next issue coming up that's going to take the spotlight away. And not that we're looking for the spotlight, but if there's ever an opportunity to change some of the systems and to be able to be recognized that there are challenges in the community, because the hate crimes and the beatings and things like that, this is not the only time it's happened. It's always happened. We've just never reported it. And, I've been saying to people, it took the killings of 8 people in Atlanta for people to pay attention to the Asian American community. And that is not me just, exaggerating. This is very, very real. People really said, but you just had a couple of people get slapped. That's not the hate crimes. And I said, it's going to get worse, trust me. And when Atlanta happened, I just didn't want to be the person to say, I told you so, but it shut up a lot of people. And I'm going to be honest with you that I think, I don't think this is over yet. I think we're going to have the Asian American community is going to have a couple more years of being targeted, and we're going to see more tragedy. The thing I, sort of put out into the universe with the hopes that it won't happen is the fact that, every morning when I wake up, every night before I go to bed, and every morning when I wake up, the last thing I do is check social media, because I'm afraid to read the story that, another horrific attack happened, and I'm afraid of, something even worse happening in New York City. So certainly, I think when we talk about, how do we spend city resources as we come out of COVID, there are a lot of things that need, a lot of things that we need. Certainly, we need to be able to speak very openly about the racism, that is plaguing our entire country. The fact that, we talk about, we're all, we need to address systematic racism. We also need to talk about what supports have really been there in the war against poverty. this really is an issue for poor people. What the war we need to declare is on poverty. It's not about anything other than people, vulnerable New Yorkers, need to get the resources that they need so they can live safely, and they don't have to worry. And so all of the frustrations aimed at the Asian American community, the part of that comes from increased, all the debts that have happened. It's the increase in joblessness. It's the mental health. It doesn't help that the former president, has stoked those fears and named it the China virus and Kung flu, and that really put a target on the backs of Asian New Yorkers. He says Chinese.
So I'm sorry, Joanne. I just also wanted to I see 3 hands raised right now. So people have a lot of questions, and also we also wanted to. So it's good. It sounds like you're saying there's there's a lot of resources needed, and it doesn't even exist. But we'd also like to know what already exists. So like there's something happening now. Where can the community go? Should they call the police? Should they talk to that hate crimes office, or call CBOs, or the kind of the resources that are immediately available? I know you put some stuff in the chat, and we have 4 hands raised right now.
Sure. So if you are a victim of hate incidents, please report it to our website. It's at the afederation.org, and if there's a COVID resource page, there's a drop down, and you can report it in 6 different languages. Please tell us so that we can keep track, because I think the only way we're going to be able to get the help that we need is to be able to say we need help. It can't just be like, trust me, I'm the executive director, I know what I'm talking about. I think we need the numbers to bear that out. And I think it's empowering and it's powerful for our community to speak up. So those are the resources. There's resources for upstandard trainings. I think we're going to start we work with Center for Anti-Violence Education. They do a great job. I think they're working with a lot of different city agencies to be able to provide free trainings. I hope that you will sign up for one of them. If you want them to come in and do a presentation for you, or perhaps work with you to maybe do an upstandard training for CV3, please let me know so I can connect you with them. I know that right now they're hiring staff right now because I think the demand is greater than their capacity. They are trying to do as many as possible. I think their trainers are about to drop because they're, it's just nonstop training, and I think they definitely want to meet every need. So please, that's definitely a resources available. And please, if there are hate crimes, if you know somebody who got hurt, please encourage them to report it to the police. I think I look at Noel, and nobody called the police for him, and his slashing was so bad it required 100 stitches across his face. Nobody helped him. He got off the L train and he walked to from one end of the platform to the other by himself. And so he said, I wish somebody would have called 911 for me. I wish somebody would have called somebody for me. I needed the help. And so I think, if you know victims, please have them come forward. I think I'll just stop there.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to call on people, and they have, and then, I know they have questions. So it's Shirley, Susan, Ricky, Heidi, and then Thomas.
Okay.
So Joanne, I'm just kind of curious. I know there's tons of funding with the CARES Act and with ESSER funds. And I'm just wondering how we can help you to redirect that funding into a way that can help with your initiative. I think, there's a lot around mental health and social emotional learning or development. So I'm just wondering how we can help as a community board with directing some of that funding. There's so much funding this year that I think that if anyone tells you there's not funding to do things, that we need to look further. So I'm just wondering, are there ways that we can help to redirect that funding into, whether it's through the schools or through community-based organizations or whatever avenue, to make sure that that funding goes to things that actually matter, and that goes to things that actually matter in with what you're doing.
Thank you, Shirley. I really appreciate that. We just had a conversation with some of our allies at the City Council. There's going to be an ask. Obviously, the preliminary budget, we didn't make it in there because, that conversation happened way before we launched ours. But certainly, I've, said there's going to be an ask coming, heads up. We'll ask all of you, because the goal with the funding, the funding that we hope to raise isn't for the Federation to keep it. It is to go back out to the community, to the different outlets, to be able to do the work that is needed. So we will send a letter. I consider Susan Stetzer a friend. I will be sending her a request to say, hey, CB3, I'm going to need you to speak up for us here, because we need to be able to get some money to the Chinatown, Lower East Side communities. So thank you for that. And, we definitely, having worked in Chinatown, Lower East Side for 10 years, I'm not afraid to ask, and I'm not afraid to ask this community board. So thank you very much for that.
Susan?
So I wanted to talk about the mental health aspect. I've also been really struck by the pattern of these people perpetrating hate crimes, the patterns of mental illness. And we all know that that's a basic issue. There actually is a lot of money in mental health programs. There are so many initiatives and programs, I can't keep them straight, and none of them are working. They're not getting to the people that need them. So to me, the issue is, how do we get mental health programs? It's how do we get programs that work? And I don't know if you have any thoughts about this, particularly in area of hate crimes. Is there something, instead of just advocating for mental health programming, what specifically can we be advocating for that would work, that would actually get services to the people that need them?
Sure. So the Federation convenes the three, the big three, they're the only three mental health clinics that serve the Asian American community in New York City. One of them is Hamilton Madison House. The other one is Korean Community Services, and the third is Arab American Association of New York. They're the three Pan-Asian, within the Pan-Asian community that actually have a mental health programming. So, we're part of our work is busy raising money so that we can give that out to them. We convene them, and they certainly have a lot of resources and a lot of experts that we're working with. And so, this is all, like May said, this is all uncharted waters for us, right? But if we don't start to have conversations and we don't start to ask for questions, and we can't just let that, what is the saying about, perfect being the enemy of the good, right? Like, we can sit here and think about it 5 times, but, the reality is that maybe we need to start to have, more counseling or we have people who can get together to be able to have, like, people don't want to do one-on-one, mental health programming because it seems scary, right? So maybe, I know that one of the programs that really worked, actually, when I was at AFI after 9/11 was, people signed up, you get together once a week and you talk about what you're feeling, right? There are a lot of these programs that is much more communal based than just one-on-one doctors, because that's also difficult. We don't have enough doctors who speak the language. And so, we need to look at any and all programs, and we need to, if there is money available, we need to be able to try, because, we don't know what is going to work, right? There's conversations around right now at this, the city council's NYPD level of what does mental health programming look like that is away from NYPD, right? Because part of the conversation also is, after the, part of the defund the police conversation is also, what additionally should be removed from the scope of work of the police department, right? And for me personally, this is just Joanne, not the Federation Executive Director, but I think we put a lot of you know, a lot of things got dumped onto the lap of the NYPD. They're not trained mental health experts. There's, from what I understand, they have 1 day training on how to deal with mental health patients, and that's not enough. And so I know that Councilwoman Ayala is leading the conversations about creating an Office of Mental Health that would be the first responders to whenever there's a situation. But there are models in other jurisdictions that I heard of that I really, you know, it was so impressive, you know, when with, you know, working families, working with experts to figure out, you know, when I start to feel an episode coming on, this is how we are going to react together, right? And so the plan encompasses the patient, the family, and others who may be involved, right? So that way there's a plan versus, you know, the plan can't be call the cops because they're not going to know how to respond because they're not trained. And so there's a lot of different ideas being thrown about. To be honest, if we had money, you know, I wish I could try them all because I think this is a very real thing. And you know, we don't know what's going to stick. So I say, let's throw everything on the wall and see what's going to work, because different things will work for different people. And I think we need to be brave enough to try.
Okay, Ricky?
Hi, Joanne. How are you? Good to see you.
Hi, Ricky. How are you?
Good. So this is probably more just a statement versus like a question. And it's to the hate crimes victim that had the issues with the Manhattan DA's office. It's kind of shocking and disturbing, and no way in defense of the Manhattan DA's office whatsoever. I worked in city government for a very long time and recall that the Manhattan DA's office had an Asian liaison, and I worked very closely with two of them. And I don't things probably have changed. I mean, I haven't been in city government in a year, but I'm just a little disturbed and shocked to hear about the difficulties that you had to deal with, and frankly saddened by it as well too. But I definitely recall, them having specifically an Asian liaison in that office. I don't know what's going on there, but so that's just my observation.
Yeah, I think it might be that, you know, there a lot of people are still working from home, right? But
Yeah.
you know, if you're working from home, you need to check your phone regularly. You know, for our office, all the office phones are directed to my computer, so I have to answer. You know, no matter what, I have to pick up the phone, right? But you know, and somebody said, oh, but you know, there's a lot of crime victims calling. Well, then you need to maybe put more than one person, right? You need to be able to make sure that the staffing meets the demand. And so, you know, if we all have to go to work and pick up our phones, then there's no excuse, especially because you're working with people who are very vulnerable and who are afraid.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, I give Vance no pass. So
Yeah.
All right, great. Heidi?
Hi, Joanne. Thanks for coming and speaking today. My question was, are you or do you know of kind of an inter-organization coordination amongst all the organizations? I think I repeated myself. So meaning I hear a lot of organizations are doing this type of work right now, or I'm just becoming familiar with those organizations right now. So I just recently learned about one called Protect Chinatown. And I'm just wondering if there's coordination between all the organizations doing this type of work, either to learn best practices or to kind of capitalize on that momentum between the organizations.
no, that's a fair question. And I think we wanted to put this plan together. You know, I think people think that the Federation is much larger than we are. We're just 10 people, right? And everybody right now has 3 jobs. And so it's been really frantic for us. But one of the things but our priority was to put the plan together, to be able to share the plan with everybody, right? To say, here's what we think is going to work. We need you all to be able to participate in one part of it or another part of it, right? And so we want to be able to start to do some convenings. But the other challenge, exactly what you said, some of these people, we have no idea. I think they just sprung up. And so part of it also is like, are you a 501c3 or are you a group? Are you a legit nonprofit, or are you a group of friends who got together because you want to help? And that's fine too, right? But then, you know, what's the sustainability plan? What's the commitment to this work? How do we know that you're not gonna, you know, hang out and work with us and we're gonna assign you this really important part of this work, right? And then you peace out in 2 weeks when we're gonna need you to stay in the fight for, you know, years. And so I think we're just trying to figure out who all the players are, and to be able to bring them together. You know, it's just like all the rallies. Everybody, you know, like everybody's hosting a rally these days. And, people are saying, and the one thing everybody asks me is like, are you going to hold another rally? And it was like, no, you only hold a rally when it's necessary. You can't hold a rally just because it's something that you do every week. It's a lot of work. But I think it's great that other people, people are stepping up, and speaking out, because I think that's the only way we're going to be able to keep this issue front and center. And it's the fact, we do need a lot of voices, but that's a great question, Heidi. And yes, the answer is yes. We're trying to bring people together. Our challenge right now is like, we don't even know who's who at this point, right? So I think we're going to probably just put out a big call to action. And the other challenge I will tell you is that some of the theory of how people want to, what they're asking for, the theories are also different. Like the political viewpoints are different, right? That's another thing, and I think the Federation always tries to hold the middle to bring different conversations together. But when it comes to, for instance, like law enforcement, some people don't, there's half the community that says we don't want any police ever, whatever. We don't want nothing to do with law enforcement. And the other half says, we want a police officer chained to, one police officer to every Asian, like, right? You can't, both arguments are not valid. And so I think the answer is in the middle. How do we work towards, truly deeming what is a criminal act to NYPD so that they can respond appropriately? But also, how do we get behind programs that can help to stop issues before it becomes a hate crime in the community? I think that's something that we also, that's what our plan hopes to address.
Thanks so much. That was helpful.
Thomas and then Larissa. Thomas.
Thank you so much for the work that you do. It's just refreshing in these difficult times to hear what the work that you're doing. And I just wish you had 100 more times staff doing your work.
Me too.
What I wanted to ask, I come from the field as an educator, and we have lots of resources in the schools, and we just have a very big net of people that are with us. I'm just curious, has your organization, have there been any student incidents reported or students reporting that their families are going through something? Have the schools been an adequate resource for you?
So we've been doing Asian American kids bullying work for a really long time. In fact, my deputy director is a former school teacher and was a colleague of mine when I worked at AFI. She invited me to her wedding. So this is going to be a lesson for all of you getting married. Don't invite me to your wedding because I'm going to suck you into my work. She said, oh, by the way, I stopped. I'm not teaching anymore. I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm not doing anything. I said, why don't you come to work for me? And she did an education program in Chinatown. So we know the I think it's 6 elementary schools in Chinatown. We do talk to them regularly. We keep in touch with the principals. We do hear the stories of families. I think they're having a really hard time, right? We started to record the stories, even the Muslim kids after the Muslim ban, after September 11th, what they were going through, right? Now it's the East Asian kids' turn. We know that parents are keeping kids at home. Kids are being called names. There is definitely cyberbullying. But then, part of, the one thing I always say to DOE is when parents complain, don't be so defensive. Don't say that's not true, you're wrong, right? Because the parents are telling you what they went through. So you don't invalidate their feelings, right? Parents have said, we try to report what is happening, but they don't want to take our report, right? And teachers or principals say, well, that's not my school, but it is happening at your school. And so we know that attacks are happening. The very first attack I heard of before we even went to quarantine was at a public school. A mom went to go pick up her kid from school, and another mom said, you people brought the virus, and beat her up, right? And so it happened in a schoolyard between parents beside, it's not the kids, but it is happening. And, Asian parents aren't sending their kids to school because they're afraid. And I think I'm doing a session with the parents at an Asian parents at an elementary school to talk about what is happening. And I do them because I also want to give parents some outlet to talk about their feelings with, somebody they think, this is our work. And so I want to be able to create safe spaces for people to talk about what, their own anxieties and what they're feeling, and to be able to work together to bring resources. But yeah, Thomas, I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot of resources. I don't know what's going on, with the DOE change. I certainly should reach out to the chancellor, but, they're trying to figure out how to open schools, right? And so, this is an issue, but, I also need to, I can't convince the parents to send their kids to school because they're afraid. They're afraid to leave their homes. And that's a very real thing that's happening.
Well,
So if you have any ideas, I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, we could definitely have a conversation after, because I'm a dean of students. My Asian population has increased about over 4% over the last 2 years. And I mean, we're on East 4th Street, but these kids are in the community. Some of them commute to school, some of them are online. And even online, we're very sensitive to the stuff that's being said to them. So the reason why I asked is that I will gladly pass the information you had in the chat to my parent coordinator. And we'll address it on the school level at my school. But there's a whole network of parent coordinators who do this kind of work that we could distribute the information very easily. So if you like, we can
Yes,
catch
please.
up.
That would be fantastic. I would love it. I think the more information we have out, the better. The more opportunities we get together for not just Asian parents, but all parents to talk about this, right? Because the sad reality is that it's the Asian community this week. Next week it's definitely going to be somebody else, right? And so we need to be able to share resources. We need to be able to get smarter with every horrific, incident, that the next community will have resources, and we will all be able to rally and show solidarity. But we also have some very hard skills that we can pass along and say, we want to share these with you because we went through it and we're going to help you, right? And ultimately, all of this work, all of the Asian American community safety, all of this work, the Asian community can't solve the problem by ourselves. This really is a citywide question. This is the homework for all of us, because it's I can teach all the Asian community, here's what you do to keep safe, but that's not, we can't do that by ourselves. So ultimately, we really need all of our friends and allies to work on this with us. And so, yeah, I would love that. And May has my email, so please let's connect.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Larissa?
Okay, mine is just one that came in from the chat, because again, I just want to remind everyone that the chat messages are coming directly to me. The question was if you could repeat the 3 agencies that you were working with. They had the Hamilton Madison House, and there were 2 others.
The mental health clinics.
Yes, for mental health.
Hamilton Madison House, Korean Community Services, and Arab American Association of New York. And I'm going to apologize in advance, because as I understand, they have months-long wait list. They were able to get their list, the wait list shorter, but because of COVID, obviously, and all, how this really is impacting our mental health, the list is growing, the demand is growing, and it's impossible for the mental health clinics to meet the needs. And so, but I encourage you to not give up and to be able to engage. And if you need emergency services, indicate that to them, to say we need help. Hamilton Madison House has, I think they have Chinese, Vietnamese, and Japanese capacity. So I think, if you need those resources, definitely, give them a call.
Great.
So just to note, everyone, Hamilton Madison House is the one that's in our area. Korean Community Services is all the way out there in Queens, and Arab American Association is in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, right? Well, yeah, it's somewhere in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
No. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, it looks like there are none. Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Joanne. And we'll definitely a lot of follow-up here to be done.
No, thank you for inviting me, you guys. Thanks, Community Board 3. I remember as an organizer, I used to come in and present. So I really this brings me back to the olden days when things were simpler. And so it's great to be with you. And thank you so much, you guys. Thank you for all the work that you do for our community. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Joanne. Great
Bye.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next agenda items are the planning, and there's also an update on the resource fair. Should we do the update on the resource fair first?
Yeah, I think so.
We need something a little shorter. or easier. So I'm happy to report, because that was a lot.
cumbersome.
Yeah. I am happy to report that a small subgroup of us, me, Thomas, Tati, and Shirley, met like 3 times in the last month to sort of hammer out more of the details of the resource fair, and we have a fairly decent program. And Tati or Shirley will give a report, an update. Who's giving the update?
Sure, I can give
Oh,
the update. Yeah, so we've met a few times to talk about it, and we've kind of nailed down the topic now. The title is Understanding an IEP, and Does My Child Need an IEP? So that's kind of the overview, and we're hoping to have pretty much the same speakers that we've been talking about since last year now, which is Advocates for Children, Include NYC, and Thomas actually had a great connection with an evaluator, so we invited them to speak as well. And we've asked our council members to co-sponsor, Carlina and Margaret, and yeah, I'll try to see my notes about the program specifically. But yeah, we're planning on having a panelist, a panel co-moderated by Thomas and by Naomi Pena from the CEC. So that'll be like the format of the event. And with time for questions, we're also going to compile like a resource document for like any family who comes, basically with all the information that the panelists send us, so that folks can kind of take something away with them. And Thomas was also compiling a video of like students telling their stories, sort of.
One student, right, Thomas? A single student. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's right, one student.
So instead of the student coming up, instead of student being a live panelist, they would be a recorded panelist, so it'd be more focused.
Yeah. And in terms of the program, we said we'd want to cover what is an IEP, what do you get with an IEP, the benefits of an IEP, like students in community schools and students in IEP assessment schools. And then we said we'd like Include NYC to talk more about opportunities for adults when they graduate and the transition into college. And then Advocates for Children, hopefully to speak more about, how to advocate for your child when maybe they're misevaluated or you don't have the right resources. Yeah, I believe that's everything. We're hoping to get a flyer ready to go soon, and the CEC is going to host us on their Zoom, and they requested a translator for us as well. So
Well, they're hiring a translator, right? A translator is being hired.
yeah,
Well, that was the whole thing, that they're going to pay for it, and so we have to outreach for it. Oh, it would be good if we had people, an audience for it.
Yeah.
It would be very.
Yeah, that was another thing that we spoke about earlier today, which was just outreach, getting the word out. And we talked about maybe doing, posting up some flyers and some lobbies or something like that. So if anyone's interested in helping out with like outreach for the event. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that we discussed, but May, Thomas, or Shirley, if anyone wants to add.
I think you covered most of it. I think you covered all of it, honestly.
I know Thomas mentioned that this should be for parents whose kids might already have an IEP, and also for parents who whose kids might need one, but the parents are afraid to even get their kid evaluated because they think it might, be a stigma for their kids. So they could get information here.
Exactly.
Oh, and just so I think we're committing to, or Naomi and the CC would like us to, blast it out twice, they said. And then we need to do this like kind of in-person outreach. Tati, you don't know about this, but because Alicia may need to talk to the exec committee, but there's some kind of resource fair. I think the Harvey's office is co-sponsoring sometime in mid-April. So she asked exec committee members to staff a table there. I forgot what day it is, but I think others can help out too. So we can have flyers there. Oh, and so Susan, we're wondering if the office could print some flyers, not a lot, but
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, just email me what you want printed and about how many. Give me some time to do it, so I don't have to, turn it around in an hour, and we can do it.
Is there a time like, you go to the office like not every day, but like right before some meeting, right?
Well, I'm at home now, but I've been going in a few times a week. So, if you give me a few days, it will not be a problem.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks. I see David has his hand up.
Oh, yes. David.
Yeah, I just want to say, it sounds like you guys were very thoughtful about your goals and the audience and so forth, and the outline sounds fantastic. I am certain that I will learn a lot. So this looks good.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we're hoping to, to help some parents, and I think that we can also, for ourselves, like, get some, learn ourselves about, what's going on right now, particularly this year with COVID-19 and the pandemic, and maybe use it to, do more, getting feedback to do more advocacy on what's needed. So it depends what we hear here as well.
Yeah. And at some point, I guess I should provide it. I have a lot of information about what they call the COVID slide, sort of what is the effect of kids not being in school right now, and where they are at with, being on benchmark for grade level or below grade level. So at some point, I'll share it with the committee, just so that everyone can see kind of the data around where we're at with, pre-K kids that are coming into first grade who have basically never been to school, kindergarten kids who are, there's a 50% increase in kids that are not meeting basic benchmarks. And then, first and second, the biggest impact is in pre-K to grade 2, basically. But I have all that data and I can share it with the whole committee if it's interesting to everybody to just kind of see what's going on. There's been a lot of things publicized, but I have a lot of the data as well.
Okay, great. Oh, I see that Patricia is here from Margaret's office, but Patricia, Gigi passed on this to Kana, I think. So I'm supposed to follow up with her about stuff. And I will do that, about the co-sponsorship and all that. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, I guess not. Okay, so we will move on to the next item, which is the committee goal setting. Okay, okay, there was a Google Doc that went around and people, that was intended to be a worksheet. I know some people filled some stuff out. Did everyone look at it at least? Yes, no?
Yes, I did look at it, May, and I filled a few things in. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay, Deborah raised her hand. I'll put her thumb up. Okay, so I just wanted to explain a little bit. It might have, some people may have misunderstood it. And Susan Susan still here? Oh,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
here.
So I think that our mission is to come up with a list of one-year goals, right? That is supposed to guide us in terms of like, you know, so we know what we want to do in this 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay. So our committee, I think, is a little different from other committees. Some people already have it set for them. Like, you know, it's done in the context of what they've been doing all of last year, you know. But for us, we have many things, and sometimes it's a little bit more complex or nuanced. So that's why I made the worksheet. So our mission is only for 1 year goals. And when I say a 1 year goal, it means what do you want, where do you want to be in a year from now on any particular item or issue? We don't have to do all the items and all the issues that are listed in the document, but it was just a list. It was just like a thing so that it's clear that we're not like discounting something or excluding anything. Now, I said that you should think about long-term goals, but it's not like, when I say long-term, I mean more than a year. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but I just think that most people think that way. They think of the long-term and the big thing that takes more than a year. And then they have a hard time chunking it off to 1 year. So the way you do, or people do the other way around, right? You think of all the little things you want to do, but you don't really have the goal clearly articulated in your mind, the 1 year goal. So that's why the instructions in the worksheet are such as it is. So if you're thinking about just things you like to do, like you want to invite a speaker about something or write a resume about something, you should be thinking about why. And then you can that is probably your goal. If you're thinking about stuff like the school at Essex Crossing, you know we're not going to get to school in a year, but there's many steps to be taken. And maybe it's more than 1 year after you list the steps. So then you can figure out the 1 year goal. So the goal is not the list of things to do, but where you want to be, where we want to be. Is that clear? Are there any questions? Is that clearer? Okay. And as I said, we don't have to do everything, you know, so that doesn't, just because we could just, you know, Susan was telling me, we just have 2 or 3 things as the goals. So that does not mean that we don't, just because something is not a goal, doesn't mean we don't address it at all in the year. You know, maybe there'll be a little thing we do, so we just have to look at it and see. Should we look at any questions? Should we then look at the document? Yeah, okay. Let's see. So we listed a bunch of things. There's most of these things are from things that somebody mentioned at a previous meeting, or it was from the last meeting when we did that brainstorming. And some of these things are things that we talked about before, and there are some things that were added since then. So the topics are social inequities, health, senior citizens. The whole nursing home thing is put in senior citizens. Homelessness. There's a lot in homelessness. Education has 3 different topics. The new school at Essex Crossing. Something about needs of students with IEPs, improving their services. Funding and resources for schools in the CB3 area, access to the COVID-19 stimulus funds for schools and youth in CB3. Then we have this other thing at the end that was added today, funding with regard to technology for students and families. I'm not sure what that is. I know Paul suggested it. I don't know if it's in the context of schools or other things. Should we go over this one by one, or any general comments on the overall thing, the overall document?
as a draft, it's a lot of ideas in there. I think it's clear that it's perhaps too many to actually list as goals in the end. Let's go over it.
Wait. Well, I'm gonna. Oh, Paul, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, so I know you're just asking about what I meant by my long-term goal at the end.
Mhm.
It's really all about how do we get technology into families' hands in the community for all young people who are in schools. Doesn't matter if they're in public, private, parochial, whatever, because there's just a lack of tech for young people in our communities. We have a lot of NYCHA housing. We have a lot of low income housing around, and not a lot of young people have the technology to be in school, and they've been in school online for one whole year pretty much, and there's a lot of attendance rates are at an all-time low, and they don't have the ability to go on because there's so many different family members who are on the computer, on Zoom, all that stuff, and this lack of Wi-Fi, just lack of technology overall. I don't know how I shoehorn that in as a goal, or how do we get that kind of funding into families throughout the community as a long-term goal. That's just what I saw. I don't know how you want to fit it in. It's just I wanted to make sure I put it in there.
Okay, I'm sorry, before we move on, Thomas, are you on the document?
Yes.
Oh, okay, could you make notes on it? If there's things to be added?
Okay.
All right. And Larissa, could you actually share it instead of me?
I can attempt to. I'm having technical issues with my
Okay,
computer
if you
tonight.
are, okay, I'll do it
Yeah,
then.
sorry
Okay, I will do
about
it.
that.
No problem.
May, isn't it a Google Doc?
Yeah, it's the Google Doc.
If Thomas is making the notes on it, why doesn't he just pull up his screen while he's doing the edits? We can see the edits coming up.
That would make a lot of sense.
Okay.
He could
If you don't
share.
mind, Thomas,
I could
sorry.
make Thomas, I could make, yeah, I could
throwing that
make you
out there.
co-host, and then you would be able to share.
No pressure during a recorded meeting. It's okay.
Of course not. Performance anxiety.
Throwing you in the fire, man.
I was gonna say what Paul suggested. I think it's something that we often cover as a committee. I think we might be able to address that via resolution. So as opposed to like a focus for the entire year, we might be able to say something right now as the fiscal budgets and stuff get set, to reset in July.
So we gonna get Dell to donate all them laptops and stuff like that. It's like,
let me get that. I mean, at least to put
Why
it out
not?
there in terms of like making a statement that because there's going to be a need. They're not announcing it now. They're trying to get a lot of students obviously back in the buildings, but there's students that are in temporary housing that are not going to come in, and there's also a lot of students whose parents, for whatever reasons, are going to say, "I'm not sending my child to school." So there's still going to be that need for these kids to be integrated, and it's not clear. The DOE has not said anything. They haven't even made the announcements for summer school and for summer youth employment. So it's going to be pretty dicey come September. That's what I was saying. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be what Paul was saying in terms of that. We could make a statement, ahead of time.
Thomas, I hear you on your end because I think you and I'm a former dean, you're a current dean, so I think we see a lot of what's about to happen. So I hear you.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be like a whole goal in itself, but it could be addressed in that one way that you are talking about.
I mean, it could be in multifaceted, but like an initial thing we can do is like make a resolution to say that this is a serious need in our community. Because Naomi's always she spoke about that like the last 2 meetings she was here, about students having access and the devices conk out. It's a long process to get a new device. We're still deficient with the Wi-Fi in our community. So I mean, we need the funding, but we also, I don't know how we could magnify the need, because it's not coming from the DOE right now. I'm
All right.
hoping it does, but it's not coming.
Can I comment on the process?
Mhm.
May?
Yes.
Okay. So the community boards were invited, to comment on the first budget. I forget what they call it, before as they were making the executive. Our deadline was either February or March. They're no longer taking comments from community boards for the budget. We passed that. The way that if there is like a groundswell from advocates for something, we can join them, add to their voice. And actually that kind of thing does work. That's how we got SYEP increased last year. But as far as the community boards responding to the budget, we passed that time. So, I mean, I would say if you're going to do a resolution, how is the resolution going to be helpful? Again, if you have a lot of advocates going in one area and adding to that, clearly we made a difference last year on it, but otherwise you would think about, what would you do with that resolution for it to be effective?
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. Thomas, are you sharing the screen?
Give me a second on that. Is it sharing now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one we have up there was about social inequities. I recall that Susan mentioned that.
Right.
Does anyone have anything to say about that right now? Did we mean social inequities in all area or just the general?
I think when I said it, I wasn't thinking strictly social as opposed to inequities in general, which everybody has been talking about for the last year. But what specifically in Community Board 3 are we talking about? That's where I was coming from. And that's why, I suggested, having the providers who are actually working in these issues speak to this.
You mean like in terms of access to something?
It could be access to something. I mean, some of the things we've already talked about, like broadband is clearly one, and in technology, those are inequities, health issues, health access to healthcare.
Okay, so inequities as it relates to our committee, right?
As it relates to our committee in CB3.
Okay. So, okay. Healthcare, it could be education.
Yeah.
It could be all areas. Okay. Any other comments on this?
I agree. I think it's a good goal. That's my comment. I don't have anything to add though.
All right, so the next thing we're talking about is health. And specifically, I know this was one of Larissa's ideas about telemedicine and telehealth funding. What do people think of what they see? Okay, this is more of an issue. We can voice support for legislation for funding. I'm not familiar with the legislation, but okay, we can invite organizations who have implemented telehealth and collect data of number of appointments and how it is being continued. So it's about the single issue of telehealth. What do people think? Yes, no,
Sounds like an idea for an
maybe.
agenda item as opposed to a goal that we would accomplish perhaps with a, over a couple months of agenda items or something.
That's why I'd put, put in number 1 that this is more of an issue than an agenda item. I know hospitals are trying to figure out right now if there will be funding for this. Gouverneur has used telehealth extensively and very successfully during the pandemic, and they do want to continue that. So it's not really a long-term goal, but it is an issue. I think we should keep on the back burner.
If we're talking about city hospitals, and
Yes.
remind that Carlina is the
Yes.
chair on city
Yep.
council, so it's very possible that someone from her office
This
would
could
be
be
able
what-
to
yeah, I
speak
would-
about it.
I can reach out to the office and see what's going on with that, and also coordinate in with Dr. Gagliardi at Gouverneur Hospital as well.
It sounds like this might be potentially a budget priority item.
That's what I'm thinking
Working
too,
on that.
because Medicaid had funded telehealth, and I would like to see if we can get some testimonials or information, some data from the public hospitals to
Okay, so
add
this is,
to our budget priorities.
okay, so this is what I'm hearing so far. It could be a budget priority, and then it has to be connected to a district need. But it would be, when we start doing district needs and budget priority, we usually have like a series of speakers who talk about different issues. And we've always had someone to talk about the health issues. So when we have the health side, let's include that, as well as any other health issues. I do recall last year, we did have some speakers about health issues, and they started, that was in the beginning of the pandemic, and they started to talk a little bit about it. They also said there were, like everything else, there were some pluses and minuses to the telehealth issue. So it's been a year since then, but we can certainly, have them back again.
Can I bring up one thing also?
Yes, Susan?
So every June, I ask the committees to give me questions about budget priorities to ask the agencies. So in June, that's going to be one thing that we would want to ask and, get is what is the funding, what do they need, and that's basically the status of it.
Oh, okay. And then for us, we'll want to, since we heard from them only last year about not just the funding, but how it's implemented. So, it helps our community. Okay. So it's okay. So that's not a goal, but something for budget priorities. Then we have to remember to ask that as a question.
Right.
All right. So next we have senior citizens. We have a long-term goal to have more nursing home beds in the district. And we don't know what the one-year goal is, but we have a bunch of steps. We have 3 steps written down here. I invite the Allure group to follow up, and the AG's office to follow up with the committee on the progress of finding a suitable location for a new nursing home. And I assume that means with the Allure group. Number 2, connect with potential providers to open a facility in our neighborhood and make sure the community needs are met with a new facility. And I'm assuming that's another facility and not the Allure Group facility. Number 3, draft the resolution outlining scope of future facilities. Did anyone have any comments? I'm not sure who wrote this down.
Oh, never mind.
I think there's a lot of in between. I see a lot of in between steps here. In between things that need to be done in between the steps.
This is Deborah. I didn't write this, but I guess I wanted to sort of have an understanding of how, what's going on in Albany in terms of nursing homes and the cap on profits that they can take and how it impacts staffing. I think sort of having an understanding of that before, I don't really understand how the changes are going to impact this, but they are certainly going to have an impact on whoever comes in here, whether it's the Allure Group or anyone else. So I think sort of learning to me in my head, learning a little bit more about how that impacts whoever is going to come in here is an important thing to sort of understand.
Yeah, that is true. Susan?
Yeah, Deborah brings up a really huge point. They're now talking in Albany about no longer allowing for-profit nursing homes, and Allure and all these other nursing, are saying they can't be sustainable as a not-for-profit. So right now we have absolutely no idea what is happening, and it's, I think, important thing to follow, which is what I think Deborah was saying. As far as meeting with providers, that's just not something community boards have the resources or expertise, or it's just not something that I could see at any community board ever doing.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. But we could, so I wouldn't even, let's just take that out.
But we are.
Can I
need to.
Can I just say, I wouldn't take it out because we had a whole presentation from different, my brain is a little bit foggy right now, but we had a whole presentation about different nursing home models where I just don't know that it necessarily makes sense to take that out. I don't.
Okay.
Because the need is there, and whatever we can do. I would want to not limit what we might think about in terms of talking about things that might be helpful to getting a new facility. So I don't know. Y'all can take it out, but I know that we've had a presentation from a different provider who was outlining what a nursing home could look like.
Okay, well, we're certainly overdue on the AG's office.
Yes, we are. So we do need to follow up with the AG's office about, and just what you mentioned about Deborah, with how this affects, future nursing home sightings. If all these nursing homes are for-profit nursing homes. And then, it seems like what you're saying is it's always, we haven't done that in a long time. It's always like, what's the ideal nursing home is what you seem to be saying, it's always, what are the best practices are, but we need a lot more experts on that too. Not just us, because we're not the experts, not all of us. Larissa, David, and Susan, did you raise your hand again?
No, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I go to the top of the pile every time I raise my hand just because I'm host. Sorry, I don't mean to jump in front. But I agree with keeping keeping these on here, because if there are potential service providers that want to come into the community, I think it would be beneficial for the entire community to have like either a question and answers, a town hall, or something where we can find out if they are going to, if we can support them in providing services, and that they're going to meet the needs um, of our seniors and of those who are going to need nursing home care in our community and the families.
Okay, well, it's one thing to, if there is a provider who wants to come into our community, I would say they would definitely need to meet with a lot of people, including us. It's another thing to proactively go out and seek providers. I would just want to make a distinction there.
Understood. Yep.
Okay, David?
Yeah. So, yeah, a goal to have more nursing homes is a good goal. There's a lot of economic constraints, and so I think that we should focus on what those are. When it says down here, steps to be taken to reach, this is like, these are steps that we will do. Removing something like, we would have a provider, a potential provider come and speak, doesn't mean that we wouldn't do that. That's just something we might do. But to actually get the ball rolling or to keep it going, our next steps ought to be, probably hear from the Attorney General office, and we probably should, if we really want to figure out how to change the landscape, which is the problem, the economic constraints, we should hear what's going on at the state level. So, those would be like two next steps to be taken. Both items 2 and 3 are kind of premature at this point. If we're trying to outline what we're wanting to do, the minimal things that we want to do to attempt this, not minimal, but to get it started, things that we will do, not things that we might do or could do.
So number 4 should move up to number 2, right?
Yes, I mean,
in terms of timing and sequence.
Well, I think so. I mean, given what both Deborah and Susan were saying, I think that's for sure. Yeah, the state really does, they have to change policies. They have to.
Oh, yeah.
To make progress on this.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I just want to remind everyone that we want to make these goals that are realistic, and we think that we can accomplish them in a year, because I think what we're supposed to do is review them later and see how we did. So we don't want to undersell ourselves, but we don't want it to be not overextend, but just to be smart about what we want to do and realize what it is that we want to do. So some of these things I think could be extended to another year, especially 3 and 4. And this is also in the context of all the other things that we're doing. Okay, should we move on to the next one?
May I have one comment?
Oh, someone has raised their hand, right?
Yeah, that was me, Deborah.
Okay, Deborah.
I just want to make a comment about what you just said. This is something that we as a committee are drafting, and anything that it's not a contract. So I just feel like as long as as we put it in writing for ourselves, whether or not, like you just said, it could be rolled into another year goal. So I would advocate, we don't have, like in our district needs statement, we don't have a page count or a word count that we're being held to. I think if we're looking at these big picture things that we're trying to figure out how to solve, or to have some sort of community board response to, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing to have them in there, even if it feels like it's, and everything that's in here doesn't, there's nothing that strikes me as like problematic to be in writing. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just, I would hate to say, let's just edit it for the sake of it. We can't accomplish it in a year. Do you know what I mean? That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, David, or did you raise your hand again?
Yes. Yeah, if this is a list of goals, then these are things that we are going to hold ourselves to accomplish this year. And I'm not talking about items 3 and 4 on here, which I would like us to see us strike in the interest of having an achievable goal and being realistic. However, in a larger sense, we have 6 goals that we've got listed here, and I think that's too many. I think in the end, we probably would want to delete all but 3 of them perhaps and say, or keep them somewhere maybe for food for thought for next year, but we really only want 2 or 3 large goals that we are going to really focus ourselves on. It's kind of like budget priorities. We can't do all of this work for sure. Or if we attempted, we would be half-assed about them.
Susan, did you raise your hand again?
Yeah, thank you. So some of these things I think people are saying these are important issues in our community. And, I think you can capture them to look at them for the district needs. Are they things that you might want to be noting in the district needs assessment? And I think the other thing is, so some of us have had experience with working on goals before, and most people haven't. And I think part of the issue is it's not clear, and I don't think it's actually been made very clear to us on what happens with these goals. So I can just suggest that when we used to do this, so the reason the goals came up originally was when Scott was borough president and made us do a report every year, and each committee had to have a few goals of what they worked for. It was not the same thing as what's important in the community, but a few goals. And then the following year, look back at how they, how successful they were in achieving the goals, which is what David is, I think, referring to. So I think some of it is confusion on how the goals are being used.
Okay. All right, so let's finish the whole list first, and then I really do agree. Nothing is a contract, to tell you the truth, but it's like we just want to be honest with ourselves. That's just all I ask. And let's just look and I know everybody has their issue that they want, or their area they want to do. But we're a committee and we need to look at the whole thing at once. So let's just move on to the next thing, and then we can go back and review and to see what our goals will be. And as as was said before, our goals can just cover 2 or 3 areas. Our committee has many more areas than that, and that's we can all acknowledge that. But just in terms of something that you want to say that when you go back and review and say like. Measure some progress on, it'll be those. So yeah, so let's just move on and then we'll go back, okay? Homelessness, okay, that's another thing that really I can see really needs to be broken down a lot. So 1 year ago, we're gonna reduce street homelessness through meaningful engagement, not harassment, and expand supportive housing.
Susan. Who's harassing homeless?
I wrote that, I meant police harassment.
Oh. That was Heidi?
Yes.
I thought you were saying Goddard was harassing people.
No.
Okay, steps to be taken. Wow. Connect with street outreach providers. Mental health and substance abuse professionals about barriers to entering shelter, using information to advocate for best practices like harm reduction. I'm not sure what you mean. advocate for SROs, and then coordinate a panel of service providers to discuss the changing landscape of the homeless population since the pandemic.
Well, I could speak to the barriers to shelter because I actually testified on that at one city council hearing. And you know, there's the state of the shelters in themselves, the large shelters, are a barrier to entering shelter because there's so much crime and they're so unsafe that people are very afraid of the shelters. The other thing is some of the practices. Well, I'll say another thing is, okay, and harm reduction. The safe havens allow people with substance abuse and other problems to be to have beds in the shelter while they're working on the problems, which is unlike the larger shelters. And DHS often has a policy of tough love as opposed to meeting people where they're at, so the advocates on the street very much believe in harm reduction, but their contract is with DHS, which has a more tough love approach.
So I guess in writing these, I mean, I feel like they're kind of scattered. I don't even know if there's steps to reach the goal. They're like all things we need to do, I guess. But in hearing what people have said previously and then thinking about it a little bit more too, it seems like this is a lot of stuff that we already know. And so, right, how do you actually advocate for that? If we can't really write a resolution that would be effective, how do you actually advocate for these things? Maybe that goes back again to the budget needs, but is there like another way to do that? I don't know.
Well, I would say, you know, just from our community, the two big issues that people report on, particularly since the pandemic, are homelessness and drug use. You know, so just say, you know, that's what I'm getting from the community of things that need to be dealt with, which doesn't necessarily mean the community board has the resources to be able to do anything. But I will tell you, even the fact that our district needs asks for safe havens has been extremely noticed by DHS. That's one of the reasons, even though we might not have been happy with a particular safe haven, they were trying to cite here. But they are looking at our district needs statement for those kinds of issues.
Yeah, this whole thing, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here and it seems to be a little bit all over the place. Is that, am I looking at it incorrectly?
You don't think that we can reduce homelessness in 1 year?
Put that on the long-term goal. No, really, my big question is, right, should these even be goals? I guess I feel like a little bit like we hit a dead end with this stuff. I guess that's one, because it seems like okay, district needs for safe havens, that's one of those many things that we're doing. And I think it comes back to kind of what Deborah mentioned earlier, and then what Susan mentioned earlier about like, what is the purpose of this? Like, what is the purpose of creating these goals? If we don't know how they're being used, are we sending them to the Manhattan Borough President's office so that they can?
No, this is just our board, that I do know. This is just our board to focus, doing this to focus. And, you know, I think you're right. I think this is a huge issue for us, but, you know, can this committee do anything is another story.
Yeah, so it is really just for ourselves, and therefore more important to be honest about it. You know, to be realistic and honest about it.
Well, I think in that respect, then, right, the safe haven can continue to ask for on the budget requests. I think the harm reduction, I don't know how, but I do think that there's ways to advocate for that, especially if the providers, you know, are the street outreach providers are also saying the same thing.
Yeah, you know, it's something that could be explored without it being a committee goal.
You mean getting street outreach providers to,
No, they're stuck. I mean, they're already doing what they're allowed to do. I think the point that was being made is that the people on the ground do believe in that approach, but they're signing contracts with the city that doesn't believe in that approach.
oh, so then they're not like being funded to do work that has that approach, which they think is the best approach.
I think that's probably very true.
And then in many ways, they're not allowed to do the work that reduces harm for people who are on the streets.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Well,
Like
that's
all,
important.
all their main goal is get them off the streets, get them into shelter, safe havens. It's not like, here, give them some sanitizer and a mask and some food and a blanket. It's none of those things.
Mhm. Well, you know, if we, you know, the third idea, if we did this panel of service providers, and that's what they're saying, could we take sort of that testimony or, you know, whatever is given to us at the panel to further try to, you know, advocate for more, I mean,
I think
or DHS funding that actually does try to fund some harm reduction work, even if it's not a total change?
There have been advances made. You know, there are city council hearings where this stuff comes up, and I think it also could go in district need statement.
Oh, okay. Because it's, I don't recall this specifically being mentioned in district needs, so.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, I guess I'd have to think about it, you know, is, you know, whether that goes in or not.
All right. Does anyone have any other, David, did you, and Deborah, are you raising your hands again?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
And yes, I did.
okay. David,
Jordan. Okay. Yeah, so I kind of like the idea of number 3 here. I would find it interesting. You know, we should only do it if we felt that there was something we wanted to act on because of it. It would certainly be interesting. I learned a lot. Now, I kind of feel that a goal ought to be, we should focus on goals where we know that we can affect change, where we see an opportunity and we see steps. We need a theory of, I would prefer that we have a theory of change, that we are going to get this thing changed in the world, and here's the plan that we will take to do it. I don't think this one rises to that level.
okay. Deborah?
You know, I think this is more of a comment. So when we're looking at, you know, Susan, you mentioned that the DHS was looking at, you know, our need for safe haven beds. And I guess what I'm curious about is the amount of construction that had started before the pandemic. Like just in where I live, there are actually like 3 new hotels. There's one that's under construction now, which would be a 4th one. So I'm wondering if, similar to what happened with Blue Moon, that they're not making a go of it, you know, is there a potential there to continue to do what the city has been doing, to use some of the empty hotel rooms that, you know, I don't know, we're going to have a rebound to fill all these spaces. It's just sort of a comment to see what's the landscape of hotel vacancy, who might sort of sign a contract to become a homeless service, homeless, anyway, a place for homeless folks to lay their heads. It's just
There,
a question that comes up for me as I look around, and there's a whole ton of vacancies.
so the problem is providers, but as far as converting hotels into some kind of supportive housing, there are groups out there that are very actively advocating for that. I don't know if that goes under land use or human services. I personally think that's a really big, very timely thing to advocate, but no one on Community Board 3 has shown interest in doing it. But yeah, there are groups out there that are very, very concerned about doing that.
And I suspect it's a combination of land use and human services. I just had a question about number 2, advocating for SROs. Is that a thing that advocates are advocating for?
Yep, that's part of the whole empty hotels.
Oh, okay. So they call SROs, right?
Yeah, well, those, in the old days, we had the single room occupancies.
Okay.
May I have a question? In terms of what we're doing for tonight, are we going to be consolidating these goals tonight or deciding everything right now?
Do we have more time beyond tonight, Susan?
No one's given a deadline. And I think, to be honest, I think so much has been going on in the board that this keeps kind of falling through. So it doesn't seem to be very formalized.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that different committees had already finished and some were still discussing it this month. And I don't know if they're done this month. And so I would say I would say our goal tonight is to not, we're not going to complete everything tonight, but at least make one pass through and go, well, this is the first time that we've had something like this to look at.
And
Does everyone agree with that?
Yes, we're a very loaded board. We have health, seniors, youth, like we're a wonderful committee. So
Yeah.
I expect to see, a goal maybe in at least, like David said, 3 or 4 areas.
Right. Okay. Yes, this is a wonderful committee and everyone here is a wonderful person.
How many more do we have after this? Education?
Yeah, we have 3 education ones and that's it. Education is, I think, 2 or 3.
You ready for education?
Okay, education. Okay, the first one, long-term goal, have a new school built at Essex Crossing. So we, I don't know what the 1-year goal is, but the first thing we already did was find out the status of Essex Crossing, Site 5. We did that in March. And someone here wrote out, reach out to schools who may want to relocate to this space.
So I would suggest that step number 2 should be follow up on the status because, let me see, we had been speaking to HPD,
yeah.
And I think we need to follow up with HPD.
Okay, so we need to do more follow-up with HPD.
Yeah, they were going to talk to School Construction Authority and get back to us.
Okay, so we're not really quite done with that.
Right.
In terms of the status. All right.
And I think the step after that would be to make sure there's a hold on this space for a school beyond, I forget what the expiration date is. To extend the expiration date, make sure that the expiration date is extended.
It was
Right,
originally 23, right?
Right. Yeah, and they didn't give us anything in writing when we met with them. They said, they were very sympathetic to us. So, but we need something in writing, I think.
is extended.
Right.
Now, with number 4 is reach out to schools who want to relocate to this space. Where would the money come to be? You know, I mean, the big thing is who's going to pay to build the building?
Right.
That's the issue.
Yeah, so that's the issue. Yeah. I mean, you know, part of, you know, at one time, part of the thing was that, you know, we would, yeah, I think that's still the issue. There is no building.
Yep.
Yeah, and then maybe we can also,
I guess, can I just say something? Just,
yeah, Shelley.
sorry, I guess I would just go back to the thing with what Margaret Chen and Gigi Lee did with the Bleecker Street site for like the Grand Union site at NYU, where they got a Bleecker Street school, which is a dyslexia school. And just like in mind of legislation that's coming down the pike around dyslexia, it's possible that we could get a sort of citywide school that's based on dyslexia education, similar to what they did with Bleecker Street. So I think that that could be one way that we could think about that site at Essex Crossing as a potential, you know, a definite school. Like, you know, they're not saying we need any District 1 schools because of enrollment, but they were able to get authorization to make a dyslexia school similar to, there's a school in Staten Island and there's the new Bleecker Street school. And I think there's going to be more when we start to look at dyslexia like legislation and what is going to be mandated. So that's just one of my thoughts for this site.
The board would have to vote on that because we have very specific, the board has voted on very specific type of school that it's going to be, you know, the grades, the combination District 1 and 2, it's going to be a community school. So the board would have to vote to change that, which they can do, but it would have to go to the board first.
Of course, I understand that, but I also think that, you know, it's possible that the board, like it could still be a community school, it could still be a dyslexia school. I just think we need to open because up. There's funding right now, maybe we could try to open it up a little bit to what we could possibly do with the site. That's just my thought.
It's a good idea.
Like David?
Yeah, I was thinking about the history of this thing, and it's maybe well, we tried very hard to convince the school construction authority that this school should be done, but the numbers kind of work against us. And I think we've kind of seen that the demographics do too. The real problem is that in this district, we're poorly served, right? The schools that we have, the infrastructure is just old. Some of them just flat out need replacing. And I don't know how, that's just a much bigger thing, but that seems to me the real problem. Shirley's idea is also not bad, you know, changing the definition if we can of what schools needed to get one there. That's not going to really solve the problem that I originally perceived. You know, in my mind, I voted for this thing because we're poorly served, and if we get this school in there, we'll be better served. This is maybe not helpful.
Can I remind everyone that 1 year from now is going to be a different administration, and all of this criteria may be very different?
Interesting. The school construction authority gets some sort of turnover as well?
Well, we're going to have a different administration. Yeah. So what they look at and how they look at things, what they consider, we know is always very political.
That's what we said with the last administration when there was a changeover last time.
Well, it didn't,
but we should, yeah.
It got worse. It got worse, and it may get worse again.
But some of the education platforms are really interesting. You know, there's several people running who are advocating for dyslexia screening. There's several people that are advocating for more social. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with the people who are running for both borough president and for mayor. And I think, you know, if we can sort of think in terms of what their platforms are, we might be able to get ahead of this site again and get something going. I mean, I'm super hopeful for this site. I think it's so needed. So I'm going to continue to just be a broken record and say everything I can about this, but I do think that there's ways that we can look at their platforms and see, you know, if it's Eric Adams or Andrew Yang or whoever gets elected for mayor, many of them are very much behind some of the things that we're advocating for. So I don't know, just thinking about that.
Okay, so we're saying there's an opportunity, and one thing I would like to know, I mean, we don't have to answer it now, is that how, you know, how the Bleecker Street School exactly came to be. So that might, the lessons that, you know, they went through or what they went through may certainly help us. So
And
someone,
that's
right.
Gigi and Margaret who would be able to answer those questions.
Oh, okay.
Because they did that.
Okay, great. Okay, I see Susan McEwen. Did I say your name correctly?
Did McKeown. Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to add, I was at a meeting about 1.5 years where this was discussed, and I remember that very interesting conversation. And just on this, you are a wonderful committee. I heard Susan talk about systems change that needs to happen. I think David said the state has to change policies to make progress on this. I mean, the theme is systems change and creating space for that to happen. So I'll just try to sticking back to the school building. And I don't know the way these things work, but I've learned a little bit through a proposal I wrote to the Parks Department in the last 6 months. I wonder about the potential of starting to create, as part of this vision, a vision document over the next 6 months, and looking at how the politics changes, but creating a vision for the community school we wish to see, and how that will address systems change, so that it's not the old model, but what we would like it to see, addressing some of the needs the committee sees. For example, giving it some intergenerational capacity, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd love to talk with someone about that. I've said enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Yeah, I would put, you know, the thing about the Bleecker Street School, I would just, in terms of time sequence, I would put it, you know, a little further up, because that's something that, you know, learning lessons from the Bleecker Street School, you know, okay. Anything on this? If not, we will move on to the next thing.
Well, point 5, one way or the other, it's just, you know, it's not really a step that we would be able to take. Like, I question whether 5 should be left here in the final draft.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it actually works either. You know, we can't just.
And it wouldn't be needed for like 5 years.
Right. And some schools, you know, they can't wait 5 years. Okay, next. Okay, students with IEPs, improving services. You know, I always want to put this in. I put this in because we've talked about it so much, and we're doing this parent resource fair. And it's certainly, you know, in this, it's always been a really important population that, and especially in this year, you know, we need to pay more attention to it. Anyone with any?
I
Yeah,
would,
I don't have a really deep understanding of this. But I just feel that we've talked about this so much. So others in the committee who have a better understanding of exactly what a goal should be, or if there even should be one, should speak up. Oh, Susan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, this isn't a goal, but I would suggest that in June, when we're making up questions, that we have, and then particularly from the people that have more expertise in this, that we have a bunch of questions that we ask for DOE about IEP services, so that we can be very specific when we advocate for funding.
Just to second what Susan said, I think we need to do our due diligence on the statistics, not statistics, but the assessment data that's coming out. We need to look at, the bereft of education from pre-K to first grade that's happened. We need to look at how online learning has affected IEPs, specifically around early identification, speech therapy, bilingual speech therapy. There's like a lot of areas where we're not really sure what has happened over this time of like remote learning. And I think it's just really important that we educate ourselves as much as possible as to what is the impact of remote learning, and then the impact on IEPs and the impact on kids who didn't have devices or, weren't able to modify their IEPs based on remote learning. There's a lot around here that I think we need to really look at, and there's going to be a huge impact. And then there's going to be a huge impact on mental health and social emotional learning in general for children. And again, there's a lot of funding that's advocated for this. Like, it's not that there's no funding. At this point, like, we're in a place where generally we're like, oh, there's no funding, but now there's so much funding that we need to actually let people know, that electeds know, let schools know, let whoever know that this is how we feel that the resources should be allocated, because there's a lot of resources, a lot. This is one year that there are so many resources for students that if we don't do something about it, it's kind of negligent for us. I mean, we really need to, we really need to talk to as many people as we can about how these resources should be allocated, because there are a lot. Of course, some is for PPE, some is for, staffing, some is for summer school, summer school teachers, because we're going to have summer school in ways that we've never had summer school before. But there's a lot that we need to really think about in this area.
And
that's my opinion.
Okay, and some of it is related to the state funding, and some of it is related to this federal funding. Is that correct?
It's the CARES Act, the ESSER funding. I mean, there is a ton of, there's like more than $1,500 per student for ESSER funding. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of funding, and of course a lot has to go for staffing and for PPE and all of that, and for capital, but we are in a position where we can actually ask for what we need, and there is funding if we can figure out how to ask for it to be allocated. That's my opinion.
And you're talking about directly to the student, right?
Not directly. So the ESSER funding, I don't remember what New York State is, but I think it's around $1,500 a student for ESSER. But that's, the CARES Act is something that's come before ESSER. ESSER is post-CARES, but there's a lot. And, of course, the city has their, ways to allocate that money. But I think if we can at least try to advise how it should be allocated, they have a deadline of 2024 for the ESSER funding. So they've got quite a bit of time. So these could be long-term solutions for social emotional learning, for social work, for whatever we deem necessary, but we need to, I think we need to really inform our electeds as to how we would like to see this allocated for our children in our district for education.
And it's something that should probably be done in tandem with other districts that are similar to ours, at least.
Yeah, correct. That would be great. Like if we could, if we could partner with Harlem or Crown Heights or, District 10, I think has one of the other highest homeless populations in the city, in the Bronx. District 10, I think it's probably like parallel to ours for homeless. Yeah, I think we need to really think about the fact that this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity for funding, and it's a lot of funding, and nobody can tell us that there's no funding. There is.
Okay. All right. Wait. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, David, and then Susan.
First, I was going to make an editing comment. I think that the yellow bit up there is actually one of the numbered items. And I thought that there was a time deadline on it. Like I thought maybe Susan mentioned June. So I think that that's a numbered item. And then what Shirley was just saying makes me think, yeah, there's an opportunity here. What is the goal really? Can we state it more clearly? Somehow it's no, I would make it a separate. I would just hit enter right now and make it number 2. If that works. Sorry, I went back to talking about editing. Long-term goal. There sounds like there's an opportunity that there can be real change. Okay, borough president. I know there's about to be turnover in that office as well. Could this be something productively handled at the borough president? I mean, at the borough board level? Could that be one of the steps we want, or maybe?
We spoke about this at the last board meeting. If I don't want to interrupt you, but can I remind people? So Gail, I think Gail brought it up at the last meeting, and because of Shirley's comments about this, I had already reached out to our state people, and it's just at this point too early. They know nothing about what's going to be available, how to allocate, and then they went to DOE. So nobody knows yet what's going on. And we brought this up with Gail, and she had already encountered the same thing. And she said that she would work with us on how to get this information and how to advocate. So I would put down there, to follow up with the borough president's office on, how to get information about this funding and how to advocate for allocation of the funding.
Yeah, the last time we talked to them was when the announcement had just been made, so it was a few weeks ago. So I don't know if there's any changes since then. They might have more information by now, So
I think they've just been focusing on the April budget they just voted on, and that's it.
Oh, the state, yeah, right.
Yeah, but anyway, maybe we can have someone from the borough president's office, if they have this information, come to the committee.
In May.
We could try to see if they have the information yet to be able to work with us.
Right now. Okay.
People should think, this is still in a draft form, long-term goal. Is there a way to state it, the goal itself, in terms of, harnessing these funds for the needs of kids in our district?
Yeah, advocate
Some
for
way.
allocation of funds for the most vulnerable in our, kids in our district, or for.
Actually, I think it belongs. So all this stuff about funding, doesn't it belong in the next goal?
Well,
Not
yeah,
this one?
that's actually what we're talking about. But it's not.
The number 3 belongs. It doesn't belong under the IEP section. It belongs in the increased funding and resources for schools in the CB3 area.
For stimulus, because that's what I called and asked about, was the stimulus funding, and they just have no concept yet of
Right.
what's coming and how they're dealing with it.
So I'll send something. I'm going to try to find it tonight and send it to everybody. I have some updated information about stimulus funding. Not that it helps us to tell them what to do with it, but and we don't know who the LEA is. Like that's the biggest challenge with the Department of Education in New York City is that oftentimes when they get stimulus funding, it goes to an LEA, which is, let's say, for example, university settlement. It doesn't go to the community school district. So there are often times when the LEA is not a district. And then there are other times when the LEA is the actual Department of Education, and then the money gets lost. So there's that potential with this funding, and that's a big concern. If the Race to the Top funding, a lot of that stuff, or the 21st Century Grants, a lot of that money went into some abyss and nobody knows where it went. So I'm going to try to send something in the chat now that has to do with this funding, and maybe we can kind of look at it like offline at another time.
All right, so we're at the end of this document and it's already 8:45. So can we, we're at the end of the meeting and we still have some updates to go. Can we agree just to end this discussion here and not make any decisions about this yet, but look at the whole thing again with some fresh eyes and maybe some more information? Deborah says yes. She was the first one to put her thumb up. So. Okay.
Yes, let's move on.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, we will move on. I see a number of hands up. All right, great. Okay, so the next thing we have is just updates from CABs or CECs, and then any agenda planning or new items for next meeting. And if you went to a CAB, just give a short update. You don't have to tell us everything they said, but just, a few topics they talked about. Ricky has recently joined the CAB on behalf of CB3. It's the Presbyterian Downtown Hospital CAB.
Sorry, my microphone. Sure. So yeah, they welcomed me to the CAB. They basically give a general update as far as the hospital kind of basically reopened now to full capacity. Mainly, especially the elective surgery stuff that they had kind of postponed during COVID. The Chief of Medicine, Dr. Renuka Gupta, gave a presentation about vaccinations. There were some questions from Southbridge Towers members that were on the CAB asking why Presbyterian Lower Manhattan wasn't a community vaccination site. The reason being is that you would need per state and city guidelines at least a 5,000 square foot space that's not being used to make it into a vaccination site. So that's why there's not one there. But they are right now treating patients, and then when any patient that hasn't been vaccinated, they will be offered vaccinations. So that's the updates from that CAB.
Okay. Any other CABs or CECs?
Hi, yes, May. I did attend the Gouverneur CAB. This week I was just looking over my meeting notes. Sorry, there was a lot going on, particularly around vaccines.
Yeah, if you could just summarize, or
yeah,
you give
there
us the
is a
important
lot of
information.
one of the most striking things that I found during the meeting, the information that Dr. Gagliardi provided, was the hesitancy among medical professionals to take the vaccine. So this was rolled out very early on to prioritize healthcare professionals, and there's a lot of hesitancy there at Gouverneur for the workers to take the vaccine, and they've been reaching out. A lot of them say that they are just taking a wait and see approach to see about side effects, etc. But they have vaccinated all of their seniors and their residents there, and they are opening up. The restrictions have been lifted quite a bit on the elderly, and they're able to facilitate in-person visits, weather permitting, in their garden, which has been a big boost to the members of the elderly, of the senior center there. They are also continuing outreach into the communities to have people come in for the vaccine. And let's see. And we are working with Dr. Wong on equity in vaccines.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of CBOs, including mine, that are just looking to refer people to get vaccinated somewhere instead of trying to hit the website. So usually it's to the community pop-up centers, but so I'm talking about small to medium-sized CBOs, not necessarily settlement houses, because the settlement houses are a little bit more connected, or they're not necessarily that connected either. Because, but is Gouverneur like is the way to access the vaccines at Gouverneur is by hitting this HHC's website, or is there
Yes,
some kind of
they're-
community referral process as well?
Yeah, they're
Where
kind of-
community groups kind of pre-screen them, so
Well, they're prioritizing Gouverneur patients. First of all, they do have some walk-ins for those who are not showing up. When they had their wait list email, there were so many people who applied to it that the email actually crashed. So there's quite a few requests for that. They are reaching out to the NYCHA, and I apologize. I'm just trying to read it. My handwriting is so bad.
They said before they were reaching out to NYCHA. I
NYCHA.
think you mentioned
Yeah,
that. In the
they are
previous
reaching
meeting.
out to the NYCHA in the surrounding areas to try to encourage them to register. But yeah, it is going through the atrocious website. I know that Dr. Gaglia already mentioned that they are using Epic to identify those who are eligible for the vaccine and reaching out to them via MyChart to encourage them to come in and get their vaccine.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Tati, are there any other updates from the CEC that we should know about? Or did they talk about all this federal funding at all?
They had an event, right? I think they have, well, not now anymore, but they had an event during our meeting. So yeah, I don't know any other updates though. So I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Unless Shirley, you went to a CEC meeting. Nope.
Okay. So so should we move on to just any new business or planning for May agenda?
Do you want me to give an update on the Blue Moon Hotel?
Yes, please.
So we still don't know what's happening. There's never been a contract signed. There are 2 lawsuits going on. One is by the mortgage holder against the property owner. The property owner is now telling people he's going to reopen his hotel. And I keep emailing DHS about this and asking for an update. And yesterday they told me there would be one soon. So no one knows what's happening. I did mention in one of my emails to DHS that the provider seemed very sure that she would get the contract since she was a friend of the mayor's wife. But it still has not happened.
And it seems like they don't have control of the building, right?
They do not have control of the building at this time. And the building owner is telling people in the community he's going to reopen the hotel.
Okay, so much for that. All right, well, thanks for the update. And DHS is going to talk to the provider about,
Yeah,
Next
well,
steps, right?
you've been on all my emails. Yes,
Mhm.
they said they would. And, I just this week asked for an update. I emailed DHS, I reported that the owner, whose name is Randy, is still telling people he's going to reopen the hotel, and I asked for an update from DHS.
okay. Any questions about that? All right, so for May, I recalled that we said we would, we're trying to get Gail's office or somebody to talk to us. The Gail's at full board, I think she said they would try to gather more information about how the American Rescue Plan Act is the money is going to come down, and that we had requested, I think, and we're going to try to request someone to come to our committee to specifically talk about the education stuff, right?
Right.
The schools, because there's a lot that's supposed to go to the schools.
Right.
And then the other thing that we had been trying to get, we got an invitation from, not an invitation, but an email from the Mayor's Office of Hate Crimes, is that what they're called?
Yes.
To give us a presentation. And we did try to get them for April, but they were already booked. So would people like to hear from them in May, just in terms of what they're doing? Or how they can be a resource?
I think it sounds great.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so Susan, could we try them again for May?
Sure. I'll try tomorrow.
So that's already a couple of things. It's a lot of things, and we'll,
You have your goals again.
yes, the goals. Okay. Anything else? Any other issues or comments or things that we need to talk about tonight? Okay, looks like it's a no. So we will have the vote to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn, May.
I second it.
All right, Thomas.
Okay, May,
Yes.
Larissa,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Eric.
He's
Eric,
here. I saw his name.
Yes.
thank you, sir. Shirley,
Yes.
Tatiana,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
and Carmen. Carmen Perez, still with us?
I don't think she ever came.
Oh, that's right. I'm
Today.
sorry. Yeah, I didn't have her at the beginning. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we will see you.
Forget Ricky. Thank you.
Yes, Ricky, thank you.
He's on the sheet, right?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry about that, Ricky.
Well, thank you, Ricky. All right. So full board is April, I think, 23rd, or it's the last Tuesday in April. Okay, so we will see you all at full board. And yeah, we don't have the May meeting yet, but it's the first Thursday in April as usual.
I'm sorry, can I just double check something? This month's full board is the 27th.
Oh,
That would be the last Tuesday in April.
the 27th, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry. Okay. Right, so have a good night, everyone.